Hi, I'm Mark from Founders&Tips, and today we're talking with Mackin, CEO and founder at Formisimo and Nudgr. Hi,
Hi there, Mark.
how are you?
How are you today?
Fine. Can you please explain briefly your professional career?
Yeah, of course. So I started out as a developer. This was back in 1997, so quite a long time ago. And I'd always been interested in computers. I'd been developing at university and prior to that. And developing it was less sexy back then. Now you have these developer rock stars, and it's a really well-paid, well-respected job. But back when I was starting out, not so much. So I started to use my development skills to get into marketing. And there's some real links between digital marketing and being a developer. And that was a big change for me, because it took me from being a creator, a guy who just makes something interesting, to someone who takes that product and pushes it to the market. And that's the really exciting bit, for me. And then I started my own agency around 10 years ago in Manchester. Fascinating experience. It was the first time I'd run a proper, good-sized business. And then started Formisimo just over 3 years ago, which was my first startup. And you'd think starting a business and starting a startup is pretty similar, but there's some fundamental differences, and there was some really interesting learnings there that I had to take on board.
And you decide to begin to begin with Formisimo. How was this process of deciding, okay, we are going to begin a business about improving forms? What was the first steps you did at the beginning?
I mean, the first big step was I noticed there was a gap. There was this usually important part of an online buying or interest process, which is the form. And there was no easy way to understand what are people doing in that form. Normal analytics didn't really work for forms. You've got a single page, 10 people view it, 5 people complete it. It's like, that's not enough information to optimize. So I wanted to find a product that went through and analysed user behaviour in all the individual fields in the form. I couldn't find one. So I sat down with a developer at my agency, and we created a prototype over 2 days. There was some fundamental questions that I felt we needed to answer. The thing that we created in those 2 days would not have been good enough for the market. But I had some particular questions around, the technical build and can we do this in a particular way? And we answered those questions. And at that point, I thought, okay, I think we can make something out of this. And then another really interesting step in the process was, I was obviously in my agency. I was working in there full time, and I had this great new product that I thought was going to be really useful and had legs. And I couldn't extract myself from my agency, quickly enough. And I couldn't get rid of my duties and replace myself. So I brought in a co-founder, and it was someone who I'd met, and I'd been talking to them about Formisimo. It's someone who had slightly different skills to me, very complementary. And I brought Tom in, and it was, it could have been a terrible decision. You never know how things are going to work out, but it was actually an amazing decision. And we've had a wonderful 3 and a bit years together, and he has skills I don't have. I'm slightly older and wiser, he's slightly younger and more energized, and it's worked out incredibly well.
Cool. And now that you have developed a more strong service and you have some clients, what's your learnings about what's the main difficulties you find that people are getting when they are filling a form?
So if we sit down with a client and they're like, tell me what are the big problems I should be looking for, our usual response is, don't listen to us, don't listen to yourself or the team, listen to the data. Every form is different. It's been developed by a different development house or individual developer. It's going to have oddities and issues. Your industry is unique. the way people visit, the way people find your site, all these things combine to create this unique experience. Having said that, there are often, very similar issues in the first sort of 2 or 3 weeks that you'll notice with good data. And these generally are split into validation issues. So people are entering information in a format that you are not happy with. Maybe in a British phone number, you enter it with brackets around the area code, or you have spaces, in it in a certain way. And the validation rejects that and says this is not valid data, even though it probably is. And you get the same with credit card numbers and postal codes and things like that. And then you have confusion. So you've created this form, you know your industry and you're very comfortable with the terminology. But someone else might not be. Someone else visiting the site for the first time might not understand what you mean by certain bits of information or certain labels. And we see that a lot. And there's a really interesting case study years ago from Experian, and they removed a single field from their form, and it had a significant impact on conversion rates. And that field from memory was name, and it was close to the payment details, and people were confused about, is this my name, is this the bank name, is this my credit card name? And all of this friction that you get in a form, it might not immediately cause someone to leave. So if someone's looking at something and they're confused and they're starting to think about things, that might not cause them to immediately exit the form. But all of that friction adds up to a point where people do exit. It adds a huge amount of weight onto the process. People get really frustrated. They go from a joyous experience of, choosing what shirt to buy, which is very nice. It's very easy to do. It's exciting. You're looking at shirts. Oh, I like that one. I'm going to go for that size. I'll get it in red. To this really awful form that's asking you all these questions, and you're like, why do you need that information? Why do you need date of birth? Why do you need my mobile phone number? I'm just ordering a shirt. So it becomes this very different and frustrating part of the process.
Following with the example of a shopping cart form, what would be obviously the main goal? It's to measure it's how many people complete the form, but there are other events or KPIs we should look at when we are trying to improve a form or a shopping cart.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of my favorites is, actually, let's go from the top. So we've got your conversion rate, which is, your critical KPI. It's the one that everyone in the business understands. And then you've got the inverse, which is your drop-off rate. And Formisimo is very focused on drop-off rate because, that is the opportunity. Most e-commerce checkouts, drop-off is between 60 and 70%. So you're losing a ton of people. Another KPI that I really like, which is much softer, is correction rate. So your aim as a marketer is to increase conversion rates, but most likely to decrease, pain and frustration, because if you can make that form easier, more people are going to get through it. And Formisimo measures the correction rate per form starter. And what that means is every single person that starts the form, how many changes did they make to it? And the correction rate is usually between, say, 4 and 6, sometimes a little bit higher. So every single person that starts the form makes between 4 and 6 changes to it. That's normally kind of surprising, because people think, okay, everyone gets through my checkout, super easy. A couple of people have problems, they're going to make the average about 0.2, 0.3. But it's actually very, very different to that. And that is a great one to measure over time. You can group that in Formisimo by week or by month, and you can see this journey from the very first data points to your current day. You can see that journey of optimization and how you've made that form easier to use. And there's a lot of other metrics. There's industry, related metrics that could be useful for a checkout. Average revenue per customer is one that's fairly universal. And then there's also time as well. If you're focus is to get people through this quickly because you know they're going to be happier, then measuring time from first key to conversion is really, really important.
Okay. From the point of view of business, can you share some numbers about the evolution of Formisimo in terms of, I don't know, users, clients, or other numbers you can share with us?
Of course, yeah. So a good number for us is 6. That's how big our team is. So we've got a pretty small and compact team based in Media City in Manchester, and that team's about to grow. But that's been effectively mine and Tom's family for the last few years. So it's a team that we know super well. We love them. They're really focused on what our goals are, and getting a team focused and happy is not necessarily an easy thing to do. You can't just say to them, guys, could you be happy? This is a cool job, right? Be happy. It's taken a lot of thought from Tom and I to build, a really open team, so that everyone knows everything. Tom and I share, 99% of everything that we do, and the team knows exactly where we are financially. And our first round, another number is 350. So that's £350,000 that we raised in our first round. So a reasonable seed round, not a huge one, not one that was so small that it hindered us. Then we raised 450 in our second round. We've always been a pretty bootstrapped business. We've always kept budgets, tight. We spend where we need to, but we haven't been particularly extravagant. And that may change in the future, as you move to Series A or B, but that's been really important to me, and I think to the team, that we are working hard, but we're not, spending in an unprofessional way. And clients, we've got over 100 active paying customers, and they range from, the very first customers, going back 2 years when we started charging people, to a very different type of customer currently. So Formisimo has gone from being really focused on SME to really focused on enterprise. And that's not that we don't work with SMEs, it's just that the energy and time from myself and my co-founder is on onboarding enterprises, and making sure that they have a good experience, but also that they're getting the most out of Formisimo and the data.
And from the point of view of acquiring new customers, what's the balance between marketing efforts, sales efforts? How you are getting these new clients?
That's a good question. I mean, I still class us as being, not quite there on having a strong and predictable marketing and sales focus. So Tom and I spend a lot of time between the two of those things. But are we 100% on exactly what we need to do every single day? No. Most of our enterprise leads come through either referrals or inbound. So it's not a marketing heavy process to bring enterprises in. And that's fine. That's not necessarily an issue. The question is, is it scalable? And that's a challenge for Tom and I in the future. And on the sales side, that is something that it's been really exciting to learn over time. So my experience was wholly different. My agency was digital marketing. The sales process is different. Tom, previously worked in a recruitment startup. Sales process completely different. So over the last 2 years, it's been fascinating and really interesting to go through the sales process with all these different types of companies and to come back into the office and to talk about what we've learned. And you'll learn something in every sales meeting. There'll be something that goes right and something that goes wrong. And even the last one I had, there was an epiphany for me in that meeting, a certain way of structuring that meeting and bringing people in that I thought would make our sales process even more successful. Go ahead.
Now, you just begin with a new business, with new product, Nudgr. can you please explain what it's the main purpose of this new product and what's the relationship with the Formisimo? That's the old product in your cartera.
Of course. So Formisimo is an analytical tool. So it tells you about problems. You then take that insight and you put it into action. And it's pretty amazing insight. It's telling you very specific issues on your form, fix them, and everything's going to be wonderful. The clouds will part, the sun will shine. It'll be an amazing day, and your conversion rates will go up. But sometimes you can't make changes. Sometimes you can't make changes quickly enough to your form. And you have this form that you know is frustrating customers, and you can't act on the insight and data. Maybe your development team is really busy. Maybe you don't have a development team. Maybe there's some significant blocker there that stops you from improving your form. So we created Nudgr as a different complementary way of fixing the form problem. So Nudgr is machine learning driven. It predicts as someone is filling in the form, so as a user is filling in the form, it predicts if that user will complete it or not. So it's completely real time, and it's highly accurate. And what it allows you to do is, if someone is in your checkout process or form, and we predict they're going to leave, we're predicting way ahead of time, multiple seconds before they actually choose to leave. You can then do something to keep them in the process. And the something is the really exciting part. So you could do something as simple as popping up a live chat. So you're engaging with this customer. Maybe you use segmentation in Nudgr to only show the live chat to people who are over a certain value of items in the cart. Maybe you pop something up from the base of the screen that tells people about how many other people love this brand. 98% of people recommend this company. 4 out of 5 stars on Facebook, whatever it is. Maybe you change the page. Maybe you adjust something in the checkout. Maybe you show something from the side that reminds the person of what it is they're buying. Often you're in the checkout and you lose track of what it is that you were first interested in and excited about. So there's lots of things you can do as the something that happens. What Nudgr is a really powerful brain that works out, is this person going to leave? We've then got templates and ideas you can use to save that person. It's a completely open system. So you can put your own ideas in. You could have things moving around, changing, deleting. You could launch things. You could even just take that data and push it somewhere else using the Nudgr JavaScript.
That's cool. And this is connected with Formisimo in a way that it's like you're building a portfolio of different services. It's like it's part of a biggest plan.
Yeah.
Or it's something that you discover another need, and okay, it's a good opportunity. We should go for it. It's part of a biggest plan.
We've been talking about this for a while. So all the way back to the start, not necessarily in this guise of machine learning, but myself and Tom were exploring, and that's why I loved our conversations at the start. We're exploring, how can we take this further? What can we do with this? And then through conversations with customers, we've realized the pain that most marketers have with getting changes done. And that's why tools like Optimizely are really important, because it empowers the marketer to make the changes. But Optimizely isn't always usable on forms and checkouts. So how do we solve this problem for marketers? How do we do something with that customer in real time rather than just some data about a person that's left? So I would say it's part of the Formisimo family. You can use one of the products separately. I mean, it's best to use both. But also the infrastructure is completely separate.
Okay.
And that gave us a chance to use all our learnings from the Formisimo infrastructure and to put that into play, in a new infrastructure. Because when you start out, you build things, quick, and when you start getting enterprise customers, you need to make sure that service is wholly resilient. So you end up, iterating on your infrastructure, and I'd say almost every aspect of that infrastructure has changed or improved, over time. So with Nudgr, we could do that right from the start. And there are subtle differences in the data we capture, the things we do. One big difference is machine learning. So you've got this learning process, you've got this comparison process that has to take place in virtually in real time. And you need a pretty complex and well-considered infrastructure to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same team developing the both products. Do you have different teams? And
same team.
How you organize internally to having two different products?
It's an interesting challenge. We've got exactly the same team on both, and I'd say this challenge was helped because my co-founder Tom acts as Chief Product Officer, and he is in charge of what do we build, and how do we prioritize. Mm-hmm. So although it's our CTO that effectively runs the sprint, it's Tom that goes through the backlog and works out what do we add in. And that doesn't mean that the development team, the CTO and the developers don't have a voice. There's some fascinating conversations take place when it comes to prioritization. But it means that they can very comfortably work on a Formisimo task and a Nudgr task in the same sprint. Mm-hmm. The developers can move from, they're currently building a new report in Formisimo, which I'm really excited about. It covers, the paths that users take down the form and some really interesting data coming out of that. And then they can move on to working on a certain type of segmentation in Nudgr. So at the moment we're looking at UTM segmentation, so from marketing source, and it works, brilliantly well. We didn't predict it would work brilliantly well. We've done everything we can to make sure it works, and that wasn't guaranteed, but it has, and it's a really comfortable place to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what are some of the learnings you get on Formisimo that now you are applying at Nudgr?
Oh, so many. So many mistakes we made at the start. And I think that's, a normal part of the process. I think, prioritization, I've just talked about that. We didn't have that process with Nudgr right at the start. Mm-hmm. It was very, I would say, dictatorial. It was very led by me at the beginning. I think that we should build this. And I spoke to these customers and I think that they would really like us if we built that. Which is like, if you're speaking to customers and getting their feedback, like that's okay. But the process we have now is, it feels like whatever we do, it's been through a very sensible process. Everything's been considered, like the things we're building are absolutely the right things to build from a commercial point of view, from a technical and a customer point of view. We get that right. And that was, when your time is limited and your resource is limited, that's incredibly important. I also think at the start, like the inverse is, you can't jump to everyone's feedback. Mm-hmm. At the start, you speak to one person and they say, "Oh, it'd be amazing if you did this," and you then do it, and it turns out they were the only people in the world that wanted that, mm-hmm. and you've just wasted time on something that people don't want. And we've had a few examples recently of where, large customers have asked us to build things, and we've asked them if they'd be willing to pay for it, and they've said yes. And in my mind, that's an incredibly strong data point for their need for the additional feature. Mm-hmm. And then if that feature can go through a sensible process of, okay, who else will this impact? Has anyone else asked for this? How would we roll this out? How would we get attention to it? And if it passes that, then you've got a really strong situation. A customer is willing to pay you to build a function or something within the tool, and if that feature is usable and wanted by other people, then that's a really amazing place to be.
Mm-hmm. It's a strong validation.
Yeah, which is what you need, because Tom and I did a US tour, so we were part of an accelerator called Seed Camp at Google Campus, and we did a US tour which was New York, Boston, and San Francisco. And we got to see some really cool startups. So, Dropbox, YouTube, and I know these aren't really startups, but they're still classed as tech startups, and loads of other ones as well, small and large. And we asked them, how do you prioritize tasks? How do you choose, what do you do when? And we were laughing about this yesterday. It's like we didn't get a straight answer. It feels like it is a problem that everyone has. You can build a process, but it's still a real challenge to work out, what do we do next? And can we be like 99% sure that that is the right thing?
Okay. And from your experience, any advice or any learning you can share with entrepreneurs that are listening to us?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, focusing on your business is kind of important. Building stuff. You may end up working incredibly long hours. That may take some kind of toll on you. You may be faced with situations that you've never faced before. Sometimes they can be frustrating and painful. Sometimes they can be joyous as well. But I guess what I'm getting at is that, this is often an amazing journey, and lots of things are thrown at you, and sometimes that tests you as a human being. Sometimes that makes you unhappy and frustrated and annoyed. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is I've got a great co-founder. Tom and I, even though we've been quote unquote married for 3 years, we can still have a good laugh with each other. We can still, raise the happiness factor. But I still enjoy talking to other founders, and one of the things I get out of that is like, okay, it's not just me. We had a pretty tough funding round last time. It wasn't the worst, but there were elements of it that were hard. Talking to other founders, I realized it's not just us, and that was really important for me. So my advice is, do consider your mental state of mind. This is a tough job sometimes, and it's often thankless. And do get out there and talk to other founders, even if it's just over Skype. Anything you can do to remind yourself, this is not just a problem that I've got, and other people are going through it. And another bit of advice, which is again on the human tip, is humility. We live in a world where people go on stage and they punch the air and they shout and they say we're the best, and sometimes they say we're the best when they're not the best. But we live in this world of great innovation but great bravado, and sometimes you need to be reminded that it's important to be humble and to be decent and to have emotions and to consider other people. I'm not saying you should go out and hug a tree every day and play a panpipe and live in a forest, but I think it's an important aspect of being a good leader in a business is to be humble, to be able to say sorry, to be able to listen to people and understand points of view that perhaps you don't necessarily agree with.
Cool. Thank you a lot, Al, for your experience. It's a very interesting products and very interesting experience here from Manchester, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time today. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks.